Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cracking open what is literally the ultimate ancient missing persons case. Imagine an incredibly advanced, thriving society, one that predates so much of the known ancient world, and then, suddenly, it just vanishes off the map. There's no fiery destruction, no dramatic ruins left behind by conquerors, just total silence. I mean, really think about that for a second. How does a civilization spanning over 1 million square kilometers just vanish? We're talking about the Indus Valley civilization here. These guys were absolute giants of the ancient world, and yet their sudden disappearance is still one of history's most baffling puzzles. So let's dive in and decode exactly what happened to them. Okay, let's dive right into this. 1 million square kilometers. To put that massive number into perspective, while ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia were undeniably famous and powerful, the Indus Valley's footprint was actually way bigger. It stretched across what is today parts of India and Pakistan, far, far exceeding the size of its ancient contemporaries. It's just mind-blowing scale. And the crazy thing is, they weren't just spread out over a vast area, they were shockingly advanced. In megacities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, thousands of families lived together in perfectly planned urban centers. Listen, we're not talking about basic mud huts here. They had modern-style drainage systems, standardized brick ratios, where literally every single brick was precisely the same size, and get this, actual running water facilities right inside their homes. They were using urban planning and sanitation that rivals stuff we use today. But here is where the story gets really weird. If you contrast them with their neighbors, a totally bizarre anomaly pops up. Over in Egypt and Mesopotamia, you find giant monuments built for pharaohs, massive royal tombs, and endless weapons of war. But in the Indus Valley, absolutely nothing. There is zero archaeological evidence of kings, no grand royal monuments, and no signs of major warfare. It was a heavily populated, highly organized society that somehow just operated beautifully and peacefully without a central tyrannical ruler. Which, of course, brings us right back to the million-dollar question. So what actually happened to them? Seriously, what could possibly wipe out a perfectly structured, peaceful, and technologically advanced society like that? Well, let's put on our detective hats and take a look at the prime suspects. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is that researchers have intensely debated 4 main theories for decades. We're looking at climate change, the drying of the Saraswati River, a sudden collapse in trade, and the famous Aryan arrival. Let's walk through these suspects together and weigh the evidence. Okay, so suspects 1 and 2 revolve entirely around water. The working theory is that a shifting climate stopped the monsoon rains, or the Great Saraswati River changed its course, causing a massive drought. But let's think about this logically for a second. While a lack of rain is obviously devastating, is it really likely that millions of people would permanently abandon these incredibly built stone and brick megacities just because of a dry spell? Historically, humans are incredibly adaptable, so the complete and permanent abandonment of an entire civilization for that reason alone, it seems pretty low in likelihood. Then we have our third suspect, economic collapse. We know from archaeological digs that the Indus Valley traded pretty heavily with Mesopotamia and Egypt, and some folks argue that when international trade slowed down, the whole Indus economy tanked. But we can effectively debunk this one too. Why? Because the Indus Valley people were incredibly successful farmers. They were completely agriculturally self-sufficient. They didn't strictly need foreign trade to feed their thousands of families. So a total societal collapse just because of a bad trade market? Yeah, highly unlikely. And that brings us to the fourth and definitely the most historically debated theory, the Aryan arrival around 1500 BC. For the longest time, the old narrative was that the Aryans violently invaded and just destroyed the Indus Valley. But modern archaeological digs paint a completely different picture. There is absolutely zero evidence of massive battles. No weapons scattered in the streets, no burned-down cities. Instead of a violent invasion, the hard evidence actually points to a peaceful migration and a very gradual mixing of cultures. So here is the ultimate twist, the piece of the puzzle that literally changes everything. Are you ready? They didn't vanish. The civilization wasn't completely wiped out by drought or poverty or some phantom war. The people simply packed up and migrated. They physically moved to new regions, taking their brilliant knowledge, their culture, and their genetics right along with them. When they finally left the Indus Valley, they generally split into 3 massive migration routes. Some headed east towards the Ganges River, integrating with local populations and ultimately helping birth the Vedic culture. Others went west towards Iran, where, amazingly, distinct genetic similarities still remain today. But a massive portion went south, straight towards South India, drawn by the familiar, highly favorable agricultural environments that perfectly matched what they already knew. So the really crucial point is how we actually track them today. One major clue we have is linguistic. Researchers have found these absolutely fascinating connections between the undeciphered ancient language of the Indus Valley and Old South Indian languages. Specifically, there's some really strong structural similarities to ancient Tamil. It strongly suggests that the language of the Indus Valley didn't just die out in the dust. It traveled south and deeply influenced the languages that millions of people are still speaking today. But the most undeniable proof isn't just in their words. It's literally in our blood. We can trace them today using something called ASI DNA, which stands for Ancestral South Indian DNA. This acts as a crucial genetic marker. It's honestly like a biological time machine. It links modern populations directly back to early South Indians, and by direct extension, right back to the Indus Valley people themselves. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where that genetic legacy lives today. It is present in almost all modern Indians. You'll find it heavily concentrated in South Indian populations, and it remains moderately present in North Indian populations too. So you see, they never really left. They simply became the demographic foundation of the entire subcontinent. Which, of course, leaves us with one final kind of haunting mystery. If their descendants are literally walking around today, if their DNA is thriving in building modern cities, why is their ancient history still such a secret? Why don't we know the names of their leaders, what they thought about on a daily basis, or the myths they told their kids at night? Well, it all comes down to what they left behind in the dirt. Unlike Egypt, which gave us these perfectly preserved mummies and massive rock walls covered in easily translated hieroglyphics, the Indus Valley left us something much, much more difficult: small seals, ancient coins, and symbols. And the immense tragedy for historians is that despite all our best modern technology, those symbols remain completely undeciphered. Their voices remain silent, simply because we just haven't cracked the code to read their words yet. But hey, even if we can't read their exact words just yet, we now know their true story. The Indus Valley didn't die, it transformed. This wasn't some fragile civilization that just collapsed into dust at the first sign of trouble. No way. It adapted, it migrated, and it evolved to become the very foundation of modern demographics in the region. So as we close out this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, how much of an ancient, forgotten civilization is still living inside of you? Human DNA and culture are just incredibly resilient. Sometimes a lost world isn't buried under the sand at all. It's just beating right inside our own chests. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey, and keep questioning history.